Caitlin Clark's name quietly appeared on a social media follow list. Not from a random fan, but from the co-founder of Project B, a Saudi-funded basketball league with ambitions that stretch far beyond the court. That small online gesture is now sending shockwaves to the world of women's sports. Why? Because it wasn't just Clark. Other elite players like Sophie Cunningham and Jewel Lloyd were also followed, triggering speculation that negotiations are already deep in motion. These aren't your typical social media moves. They're strategic breadcrumbs dropped by billion-dollar backers, and Clark is at the center of it all.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
What makes this moment so unprecedented is that Project B isn't just throwing around buzzwords. It's bringing financial firepower and global strategy to a sport that has long been undervalued. Clark's involvement isn't merely symbolic. It could signify the first major pivot of women's basketball into a new economic and global era, fueled by non-Western investment. This isn't about a league trying to survive. It's about one trying to dominate. And it's using smart timing, online signals, and big names to do it. Caitlin Clark might be about to pull off the most jaw-dropping power move in women's sports history, and all it took was a subtle Instagram follow. General. Folder not found. Create new folder. Project B General. Yes, that's where this story kicks off. A single quiet social media click from a co-founder of a mysterious new Saudi-backed basketball league. Project B sends the internet into meltdown. And the target? None other than Caitlin Clark, the unstoppable force who turned women's college basketball into a primetime event. But this isn't just about one player getting attention online. This is a meticulously orchestrated strategy, backed by serious international money, that could flip the entire women's basketball landscape on its head. Because let's be clear, this isn't a hoax. This isn't some random startup trying to make waves with flashy graphics and empty promises. Project B is backed by real Middle Eastern investment, with verified funders and a game plan to turn women's basketball into a global billion-dollar industry. And if Caitlin Clark signs on, that game plan goes from speculative to seismic. The clues are all there. Over the past few weeks, Project B's leadership has started following a very specific list of players on social media. Caitlin Clark, Jewel Lloyd, Sophie Cunningham. It's not a coincidence. It's a trail of digital breadcrumbs. A modern recruitment campaign playing out in plain sight, where a single follow button carries the weight of multi-million-dollar negotiations. And it all leads back to one major theory. They want Clark to be the face of this league, which, if you followed her trajectory, makes perfect sense. Caitlin Clark isn't just a standout athlete. She's a walking ratings machine. From viral highlight reels to record-breaking NCAA viewership, her presence single-handedly transformed the perception of women's basketball. And Project B knows it. They're not just scouting talent. They're targeting a cultural shift. They want more than a player. They want a symbol. And here's why it matters. This league is offering life-changing money. Not slightly better. Not WNBA plus a bonus. We're talking salaries and endorsement potential that make the current WNBA setup look archaic. That's not shade on the W. It's just reality. Project B's pitch is bold. Bring your skills, bring your brand, and get paid like a superstar on a global stage. No more playing overseas in the off-season just to make ends meet. No more second-tier media coverage. They're trying to break the system and rebuild it with power, money, and visibility at the core. Now, some might raise an eyebrow at the idea of a Middle Eastern-backed league stepping into the women's sports world with this level of intensity. But unlike gimmicky pop-up leagues, Project B is built on genuine infrastructure, credible investors, and a strategic rollout. It's not some influencer in a warehouse fantasy. This is international money meeting intentional planning, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The timing of all this? Also extremely calculated. Caitlin is currently in her off-season, which means no obligations, no schedule pressure, and most importantly, the perfect window for high-level conversations and major decisions. The social media strategy, following key players right now, in this specific moment, isn't subtle. It's a loud, flashing sign that something big is coming. And Project B is counting on the world to notice. And we are. Because if Caitlin Clark makes this move, it won't just be the biggest signing in women's basketball. It might be the moment that redefines how we view the sport altogether. We're talking WNBA stars reconsidering their career paths, networks chasing broadcasting rights, brands scrambling to attach themselves to the first true global women's basketball league. Let's not forget, Caitlin already disrupted the NCAA status quo. She turned women's college basketball into a cultural event. People who had never watched a game before suddenly knew her name. So if she becomes the centerpiece of Project B, the ripple effects won't just shake the court. They'll tear through the entire sports industry. The old guard will either adapt or get left behind. And honestly, the social media patterns are too deliberate to ignore. This isn't just some intern going on a follow spree. These are targeted, strategic moves by Project B's co-founder. Signal flares aim directly at the most influential athletes in the game. Every click is a conversation starter. Every follow is a breadcrumb. They're building a story in real time, one post at a time, while we all try to decode it like it's some kind of sports espionage thriller. But again, it's not just drama for drama's sake. There's a larger play here. Project B is offering something that's been lacking in women's sports for decades, a chance to build something big from the ground up with actual resources behind it, not an add-on, not a charity project. A legitimate, competitive, international league where women's basketball is an afterthought. It's the main event. And let's talk about the big picture here. This isn't just a one-player story. If Project B locks in Caitlin, other stars will follow. You don't need a sports economist to tell you how that snowballs. 1 superstar brings the spotlight. 2 brings competition. 10 brings legitimacy. Suddenly, the WNBA doesn't look like the only game in town. Suddenly, there's a choice. And with that choice comes power. We're at the edge of a serious shift. And at the center of it all is one of the most electrifying athletes of this generation, being quietly courted by a league with the kind of money and vision most players only dream about. This isn't a rumor mill. This isn't a fantasy scenario. This is real social media activity, backed by real money, aimed at real athletes. Whether you're skeptical or excited, one thing for sure, someone is playing chess here, not checkers. And Project B isn't hiding the fact that it's coming for the crown. The traditional sports ecosystem isn't ready for what's about to hit if Caitlin Clark says yes. So what does this mean for the future of women's basketball? Well, if this deal happens, it could be the start of a global rebranding. Not just better salaries, but better marketing. Not just more airtime, but prime time. A full-on redefinition of what success looks like in the sport. And if Caitlin leads a charge, she doesn't just make history. She reshapes it. Let's be real. This league wouldn't be chasing her this hard if they weren't ready to roll out something massive. There's no room for maybe in a play like this. Everything about it, the timing, the strategy, the people involved, points to a very calculated and very expensive plan already in motion. And with the buzz intensifying, it's starting to feel less like if and more like when. So here's the real question. Are we watching the start of a revolution in real time? Will Caitlin Clark become the face of a new global empire in women's basketball? Or will the traditional leagues step in with a counteroffer to protect their territory? Either way, something's shifting, and fast. The power dynamics, the money, the global influence, it's all in play. And one player might be about to tip the entire balance. If you've been following this story, you know this isn't just sports news. This is the beginning of a movement. And however it ends, one thing is clear. Caitlin Clark is at the center of a very expensive, very strategic, very public tug-of-war. And the future of women's basketball might just depend on who wins. 2, if you want to stay on top of how this unfolds, hit like, share this with someone who needs to see it, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you support a league like Project B? Do you think Caitlin should take the deal? And of course, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because whatever happens, this is just the beginning. General, all right, let's go deeper, because this story isn't cooling off anytime soon. We're not just talking about an athlete signing a deal. We're talking about a generational talent being courted by a brand new league backed by the kind of capital that changes lives and industries. Caitlin Clark isn't being invited to join something existing. She's being invited to build it, from the ground up, To be the face, the brand, the icon of what could be the most aggressive and ambitious leap forward in women's basketball history. Project B knows exactly what it's doing. The timing, the tactics, the calculated drip of social media signals. It's all part of a deliberate campaign. This isn't about hype. It's about control. It's about shifting the conversation and placing the spotlight squarely on their court, literally. They're leveraging curiosity, speculation, and star power to draw eyes to something that, just months ago, didn't exist in the public consciousness. And suddenly, it's what makes this story so wild is how subtle the power play is. They're not announcing massive rosters or throwing press conferences with fireworks. They're dropping hints. They're using follows, those tiny casual social media interactions that usually go unnoticed, to spark full-blown media storms. When Project B's co-founder follows Caitlin Clark, it's not just a digital nod. It's a message. We're watching you, and we're ready to make you an offer you can't refuse. It's hard to overstate how different this approach is. Most leagues go through agents, media leaks, press releases. This is new age PR warfare. It's sleek, it's silent, and it's working. Let's rewind for a second and talk about what Caitlin Clark has done to even be in this position. She didn't just play well in college. She owned the court. She turned games into sold-out events, racked up record-breaking viewership numbers, and created viral moments that put women's hoops on the same digital stage as the NBA. The attention she brings isn't niche. It's national, sometimes global. And that's exactly what makes her such a valuable target. Project B isn't just looking for a good player. They're looking for a movement, a marketing engine, a way to break into the mainstream conversation instantly. And Caitlin Clark is that shortcut. 2. Here's the chess move. If Project B lands her, every other major player in the women's game is going to have to sit up and take a long, hard look at their options. Loyalty to the WNBA is strong, but loyalty doesn't pay like Project B is promising to. You think Nike, Gatorade, and all those big brand sponsors aren't watching this unfold? Everyone in sports marketing is waiting to see where Caitlin goes, because wherever she lands, that's where the audience follows. And money talks. Project B's whole pitch hinges on one thing. We will pay you more than anyone else. That's not just a flex. It's a challenge to the current system. It's a very real, very public exposure of just how little women athletes have been compensated for their talent and impact. When a new league comes along and offers what the WNBA never could, you're not just choosing a paycheck. You're choosing a new way of doing things. In general, but of course, there's a risk. Jumping into something new is always risky, especially when a league is based overseas, and the financial power behind it comes from a region not traditionally associated with women's empowerment. That's the tension. That's the part of the story no one can look away from. Because yes, it's groundbreaking. Yes, it could change the future. But it also comes with questions. Will the league be sustainable? Will it respect the players' voices? Will it be more than a flashy one-season wonder? And how will it balance the optics of being backed by powerful Middle Eastern investors with the goal of promoting women's sports on a global stage? These aren't minor questions. They're huge. But the answers may not even matter in the short term if the money is right and the infrastructure is real. Players have been chasing stability for years, forced to juggle multiple leagues, overseas contracts, and off-court jobs just to make ends meet. If Project B offers consistency, visibility, and actual financial freedom, that's a hard offer to pass up. And Caitlin Clark knows all of this. She has options. She has leverage. And she's got the kind of visibility that makes her every move headline-worthy. Whether she signs or not, just being in the conversation is a signal of how much the industry is changing. There's a bigger shift happening here that can't be ignored. For decades, women's basketball has been underfunded, undermarketed, and underappreciated. The talent was never the problem. The investment was. Now, with Project B entering the scene, we're seeing what happens when the money does show up, when the spotlight is intentionally turned on, when the game is treated with the same level of ambition and respect that it's always deserved. And the people running this league, they're clearly playing a long game. They're not just courting one player. They're sending a message to an entire generation. There's a new way to win. It also speaks to something deeper, the globalization of sports power. American leagues are no longer the final destination. We've seen it in golf. We've seen it in soccer. Now it's coming for basketball. The rest of the world is building their own versions of success, and they're starting to outpace the old systems. Project B could be the tipping point that pulls women's basketball into that global arms race. And Caitlin Clark? She might be the face on the front lines. If she signs, the message is clear. The game is changing and the players are finally getting their due. It could open the floodgates for endorsements, streaming deals, international tournaments, and a whole new class of fans. We're not just talking about a new league. We're talking about a new industry blueprint. So why is this all happening now? Because the timing is perfect. Women's sports are finally getting the attention they deserve. Viewership is up, sponsorships are climbing, and fans are more vocal than ever about wanting real investment. Project B sees that moment, and they're trying to own it, not with promises, with receipts, with contracts, with cash. It's also happening because social media changed the rules. You don't need traditional media rollouts anymore. All it takes is one post, one tweet, one follow, and suddenly the entire sports world is refreshing their timelines, trying to decode what it all means. That's the playbook now, and it's working. So here we are, watching history potentially unfold one digital breadcrumb at a time. Caitlin Clark, in many ways, holds the keys. Her next move could either reinforce the old system or ignite something entirely new. And with everything lined up, the timing, the money, the global attention, it's hard to see this ending quietly. If this deal happens, it won't just be about a basketball contract. It'll be about legacy, about a player choosing to use her influence not just to win games, but to change the way the entire sport functions. And if she doesn't take the deal, well, that's still a power move. Because even being at the center of this conversation puts her in a league of her own. All eyes are on her. Every headline, every podcast, every investor, every aspiring young athlete who wants to know if the game they love is finally going to pay them what they're worth. This moment isn't just about Caitlin Clark. It's about every player who came before her and everyone who'll come after. General, let's keep going, because this isn't just a sports story anymore. It's a power struggle in real time, and it's happening in the public eye with all the intensity of a championship game tied in the final seconds. Think about this. How often does a brand new league with no games, no public rosters, and no official launch date manage to steal headlines from the WNBA during its own season? That's how loud this Project B buzz has gotten. And it all comes back to one name, Caitlin Clark. Because even without saying a single word publicly, her silence is deafening. Her lack of denial? A headline. Her lack of commitment to the W? Another headline. The fact that she hasn't shut this down instantly tells you everything you need to know. She's watching. She's listening. She's considering. And the basketball world is holding its breath. And this isn't coming out of nowhere. Clark's entire college career was a slow burn transformation into a cultural force. She was appointment viewing. Someone who dragged casual viewers into women's basketball by sheer force of talent and confidence. And now, Project B is trying to bottle that lightning and set it off on a global scale. Here's the twist, though. This isn't just about Caitlin Clark. That's the part that makes this moment so important. Her potential move opens a door, but it's the chain reaction that could change everything. Let's say she does sign. What happens next? Well, immediately, you've got other top players in the league, and in college, looking at their calendars and their agents. Because suddenly, staying in the WNBA isn't the default anymore. Suddenly, you've got options with dollar signs and global branding attached. And in a league where players have historically had to grind for every ounce of attention and compensation. That's a revolutionary idea. It also forces the WNBA's hand. They can't ignore it. They can't shrug it off. If Project B is real and they land Clark, the W either steps up fast or risks losing its rising stars to a shinier, better-paying, better-marketed competitor. That's not just a personnel problem. That's an identity crisis. And let's be honest, the league has always had to operate on tight margins. The marketing budgets, the salaries, the TV deals, everything is still underwhelming compared to the NBA. Now imagine a rival league showing up with blank checks and international broadcast ambitions. That doesn't just threaten the W's talent pool, it threatens its relevance. Too. That's why this whole situation feels like more than just a sports negotiation. It's a statement about value, about worth, about who gets to make money off the game and who gets left behind. Project B isn't pretending to be grassroots. It's not hiding the money. They're leading with it. They're saying, we're here to pay you what you're worth. All of you. And if Caitlin Clark signs, that message gets 10 times louder. But even beyond the economics, this is about narrative control. For the first time in a long time, women athletes have a chance to choose how their careers look. Not just where they play, but how they're marketed, how they're paid, how they're prioritized. It's no longer about fitting into a decades-old system that wasn't built for them. It's about building a new one. General, that's what makes this so compelling. That's why everyone's watching. Because whether this league succeeds or not, whether Caitlin Clark says yes or no, the idea has already taken root. That women's sports can be more than an afterthought, that they deserve the same ambition, the same financial firepower, the same grand visions as the men's leagues. Project B is putting that on the table and daring the rest of the world to match it. And let's not forget, the public doesn't hate this idea. Far from it. Fans are curious. They're excited. They want women athletes to get paid. They want the drama. They want the spectacle. Because what used to be a niche has turned into a growing, thriving audience that's ready for something bigger. So what happens next? That's the $1 million, or maybe multi-million-dollar question. Does Caitlin Clark take the leap and become the face of a global sports revolution? Or does she stay with the WNBA, forcing it to rise to the challenge and evolve in real time? Either path changes the game. Because now, thanks to a few well-placed social media breadcrumbs, thanks to a calculated play by a very well-funded league, the power dynamic has shifted. The players have leverage. The fans have questions. And the old system is officially on notice. So if you've been keeping up with this saga, don't blink. Because whatever Caitlin Clark decides to do next is going to shape the future of women's basketball, for better or for chaos. Like this video if you're following the storm. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and drop a comment. Should Caitlin take the money or stick with the Legacy League? Either way, the countdown has already started.